The alarm bells rang through the Valdarian monitoring station like screaming metal. Captain Zalthek's forearms moved quickly across his control panel as red warning lights flashed all around him. His green skin turned pale as he read the sensor. "Data! This cannot be right," he whispered to himself. Something massive was coming out of the void sector. The void sector was a place where no ship ever went. It was full of dangerous radiation and strange energy storms. The Galactic Federation had marked it as a dead zone 30 years ago, right after they finished destroying the humans. Zalthek checked his sensors again. The readings were impossible. The object was huge, bigger than any ship he had ever seen. Its energy signature was off the charts. His computer could not identify what it was made of. "Send a message to Federation Command," Zalthek told his crew. "Priority 1. We have an unknown massive vessel emerging from the void sector." His communication officer, a thin, blue-skinned Canorian, looked nervous. "Sir, the ship is broadcasting something." "Put it on the main screen." Static filled the room, then a voice came through. It was speaking in the old human language, English. Most Federation species had forgotten that language years ago. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United. Earth Space Command. We are coming home." Zalthek felt his blood turn cold. Every Federation citizen knew that name from the history books. Admiral Sarah Chen was the last human military leader. She had commanded their biggest warship, a supercarrier called the UES Retribution. Both the ship and the admiral had disappeared. During the final battle at Sol, when the Federation destroyed Earth, that was 30 years ago. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew this. "Run a deep scan on that vessel," Zalthek ordered. His hands were shaking now. The scanner results came back, and Zalthek had to sit down. The ship's basic design matched the old records of the UES Retribution. But it was wrong. All wrong. The original Retribution had been big for a human ship, but still smaller than most Federation cruisers. This thing was massive. It was at least 10 times larger than the old ship. Its hull was made of materials that did not exist in any Federation database. Strange energy patterns moved across its surface like living lightning. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "I'm reading weapon signatures that I've never seen before. And sir, there are more ships." "More ships?" "Small craft are launching from the main vessel. They're moving in formation toward our border stations." Zalthek watched his screen as dozens of smaller ships spread out from the massive carrier. Each one was sleek and deadly looking. They moved with perfect coordination like they were controlled by one mind. "Get me a direct line to Federation High Command," Zalthek said. "Now." While he waited, he studied the tactical display. The human ships were not attacking anything. They were just moving forward, slow and steady, toward Federation space. It was more frightening than if they had come in shooting. High Admiral Corinth appeared on the communication screen. The old Tharian looked tired and annoyed. "This better be important, Zalthek. I was in the middle of—" "The humans are back, sir." Corinth's 6 eyes went wide. "That's impossible. We glassed their homeworld. We hunted down their colonies. We destroyed their fleets. There are no humans left." "With respect, sir, you're wrong. The UES Retribution just came out of the void sector. Admiral Sarah Chen is alive, and she's broadcasting to the entire galaxy." For a long moment, Corinth said nothing. Then he leaned forward. "Show me." Zalthek transmitted all his sensor data. He watched as the High Admiral's face changed from disbelief to confusion to fear. "How is this possible?" Corinth whispered. "The void sector is uninhabitable. Nothing can survive there. We sent probe ships 20 years ago. They were destroyed by the radiation storms within hours. I don't know, sir. But they're here. And, sir, they're different." "Different how?" Zalthek pulled up a close-range scan of one of the smaller human ships. "Look at this hull design. It's not just metal. There are organic components mixed in, living metal, and the energy readings. Sir, they're using technology we don't understand." The communication line was quiet for several minutes. Finally, Corinth spoke again. I'm calling an emergency session of the Federation Council. Do not engage these ships. Do not provoke them. Just watch and report. What if they enter Federation space? Then we find out what 30 years in hell taught them. The line went dead. Zalthek stared at his screens as the human fleet continued its slow advance. The massive carrier moved like a mountain through space, surrounded by its escort ships. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. His sensor officer spoke up. Sir, I'm picking up more transmissions from the human ships. They're not using standard Federation communication protocols. It's something new. Can you decode it? I'm trying, but, sir, I think they're talking to each other without using radio waves at all. The ships are coordinating perfectly, but I can't find any communication signals between them. Zalthek felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean they might be sharing thoughts, sir. Like they're all connected somehow. The tactical display updated. More ships were emerging from the void sector. Not just human ships, but vessels of completely unknown design. Some looked like they were grown rather than built. Others seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to see clearly. Sir, the communication officer said, Admiral Chen is broadcasting again. This time it's on all Federation frequencies. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and clear. It sounded human, but there was something else underneath it. Something cold and patient. Citizens of the Galactic Federation, this is Admiral Sarah Chen speaking for humanity. 30 years ago you declared war on our species. You destroyed our worlds. You hunted our children. You thought you had wiped us out. The voice paused. And in that silence, Zalthek could hear his own heart beating. You were wrong. We survived. We learned. We adapted. We found teachers in the dark places where no one else dared to go. And now we have returned. Another pause. We do not come seeking revenge. We come seeking what was always ours. Our place in this galaxy. Our right to exist. Our future among the stars. The transmission continued, but now there was something different in the voice. Something that made every Federation officer in the monitoring station step back from their consoles. To those who wronged us, we offer a choice. Accept the new order that is coming, or be swept aside by it. To those who remained neutral, we offer partnership. To those who helped us in our darkest hours, we offer friendship. But understand this, humanity is no longer the species you tried to destroy. We have become something more, something better, something that cannot be stopped, cannot be contained, and will never again face extinction. The transmission ended. The monitoring station was silent except for the hum of machinery. Zalthek looked at his crew. Every face showed the same expression, fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of the unknown. Fear of change. Fear of a future they could not control or understand. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, what do we do now? Before Zalthek could answer, new alarms started ringing. His sensors showed human ships appearing throughout Federation space. Not attacking, not threatening, just appearing. They had been there all along, hidden, waiting. The humans had not just returned. They had never really left, and now the galaxy would learn what 30 years of preparation had taught them. The Federation Council chambers had never seen a meeting like this one. Representatives from 50 different species sat in their floating chairs, all staring at the main display screen. The image showed the UES Retribution hanging in space like a metal moon. High Admiral Corinth stood at the center podium, his 6 eyes darting nervously between the assembled delegates. The human fleet has requested a diplomatic meeting. Admiral Chen wants to address this council directly. Absolutely not, snapped Councillor Vextar, the Zerion representative. His insect-like mandibles clicked with anger. The humans are a dead species. This is obviously some kind of trick. The sensor data doesn't lie, Corinth replied. That ship is real. Those humans are real, and they're waiting for our answer. Counselor Thyra, speaking for the Altarian Unity, raised her crystalline hand. Even if they are real humans, why should we negotiate with them? We won the war. Earth is gone. Their colonies are destroyed. What could they possibly offer us? Maybe. The question is what they might take from us if we refuse, muttered Counselor Grepp from the Valdarian systems. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some delegates wanted to attack the human fleet immediately. Others wanted to ignore them completely. A few suggested finding out what the humans actually wanted before making any decisions. High Admiral Corinth called for silence. Admiral Chen has agreed to meet us at Neutral Station 7. She will bring only a small escort. We will have full security. 3 days later, the meeting took place. Neutral Station 7 was a diplomatic outpost in empty space, designed for exactly this kind of situation. The station's sensors tracked the approaching human shuttle as it left the massive carrier. The shuttle itself was wrong. It moved too smoothly through space, like it was swimming through water instead of flying through vacuum. Its hull seemed to shift and change color as it approached the station. When it docked, there was no sound at all. Station Commander Pelthon watched through security cameras as the airlock opened. What emerged made him take a step backward, even though he was watching from another room. The humans looked like humans, but different. They were taller than he remembered from the old records. Their movements were too precise, too controlled. They walked in perfect formation, like soldiers. But there was something predatory about the way they moved. Admiral Sarah Chen stepped forward. She had been famous during the war, a brilliant military leader who had frustrated Federation forces for years. But the woman walking through the station corridors was not the same person from the old pictures. She was tall and lean, with silver hair and pale skin. But her eyes were the most unsettling thing about her. They were still human eyes, but they seemed to see everything at once. When she looked at the security cameras, it felt like she was looking directly at Commander Pelthon. Her uniform was made of some kind of living material that shifted and moved like it was breathing. Strange symbols glowed softly on her collar and sleeves. The other humans with her wore similar uniforms, and they all moved with the same eerie coordination. In the council chamber, the Federation representatives waited nervously. When Admiral Chen entered the room, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "Honorable delegates," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without any amplification. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. High Admiral." Corinth stood up. "Admiral Chen, we thought you were dead. All of humanity was thought to be extinct." Chen smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "Death is a temporary condition. We learned that lesson well." "Where have you been for 30 years?" demanded Counselor Vexistar. "The void sector is uninhabitable. Nothing can survive there." "Nothing that remains unchanged," Chen replied. "We went there because we had no choice. You had taken everything else from us, our worlds, our colonies, our future. The void sector was the only place left." She moved to the center of the room, and every delegate leaned back instinctively. There was something about her presence that made their survival instincts scream warnings. "In the void sector, we found something unexpected. We found the architects." Murmurs of confusion went around the chamber. Most delegates had never heard that name before. "The architects," Chen continued, "are what remains of the first species to achieve true galactic civilization. They transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They have been sleeping in the void sector, waiting for someone worthy to find them." "That's impossible," said Counselor Thyra. "Our scientists have studied that region for centuries. There's nothing there but radiation and energy storms." "Your scientists looked for what they expected to find," Chen said. "We looked for what we needed to find, and we found teachers." She touched a control on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared above the chamber. It showed the void sector, but not as the Federation had ever seen it. Hidden structures floated in the radiation storms, massive constructs that dwarfed even the largest Federation ships. The architects offered us a choice, Chen explained. We could remain as we were and eventually die out in the wasteland, or we could evolve. We could become something more than human. What did you agree to? Asked High Admiral Corinth, though he seemed afraid to hear the answer. We agreed to survive, at any cost. The holographic display changed, showing images that made several delegates gasp in horror. Humans undergoing strange procedures, bodies being altered with unknown technology, minds being connected to vast networks of information. The process was not easy, Chen said, her voice becoming colder. Most of us died. Those who survived were changed forever. We became stronger, smarter, more efficient. We learned to work together as one organism while remaining individuals. You're not human anymore, whispered Counselor Grepp. We're more human than we ever were before, Chen replied. We're everything humanity could become when pushed to its absolute limit. She gestured, and the holographic display showed the UES Retribution. But now they could see it clearly. The ship was not just larger than before, it was completely different. Parts of it seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. Weapons that looked like living creatures were mounted along its hull. Energy patterns that hurt to look at directly flowed across its surface. This is what we learned in 30 years of exile, Chen said. We learned that survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. Survival is about being willing to change when change is necessary. What do you want from us? Asked High Admiral Corinth. Chen looked directly at him, and he felt like she was seeing into his soul. We want what was always ours, our place in this galaxy. But we're not interested in conquest or revenge. We're interested in order. What kind of order? The kind where humanity never again faces extinction. The kind where no species makes the mistake of thinking they can wipe out another species without consequences. She walked closer to the Federation delegates, and several of them moved their chairs backward. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long, she continued. No real progress, no real growth, just the same old politics and the same old problems. The architects showed us that this pattern has repeated many times before. A dominant species rises, becomes comfortable, stops growing, and eventually falls. The Federation has brought peace to the galaxy, protested Counselor Vexitar. The Federation has brought stagnation, Chen corrected, but that's about to change. Are you threatening us? Demanded Corinth. Chen smiled again, and this time it was even less reassuring than before. I'm explaining reality to you. Humanity has returned. We have capabilities you cannot imagine. We have knowledge you cannot comprehend. We have patience you cannot match. She touched her wrist control again, and the display showed star maps of Federation space. Red dots appeared on hundreds of systems. These dots represent human assets that have been in place for decades, she said calmly. Sleeper agents, hidden colonies, weapons platforms, supply bases. We have been preparing for this moment since the day you thought you destroyed us. The chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate stared at the star map, counting the red dots, realizing how completely they had been outmaneuvered. We're not here to negotiate, Chen continued. We're here to inform you of the new reality. Humanity is back. We're different now. We're better. And we're never going away again. She turned toward the exit, and her escort moved with her in perfect synchronization. Think carefully about your next decisions, she said without looking back. The old galaxy is ending. The new one begins now. You can be part of it, or you can be left behind by it. But you cannot stop it. The airlock sealed behind the humans, and their shuttle departed as silently as it had arrived. In the council chamber, 50 different species sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand what they were really facing. The humans had not just survived their extinction, they had learned from it, and now they were back to make sure it never happened again. Dr. Kessa Thrain had spent her entire career studying extinct species. As the Federation's chief xenobiologist, she thought she understood what extinction meant. She was wrong. In her laboratory aboard the research vessel Deep Current, Kessa stared at the data streams coming from hidden Federation listening posts. For the past week, since Admiral Chen's meeting with the Council, reports had been flooding in from across the galaxy. Humans were everywhere. Not just a few survivors hiding in remote colonies. Millions of them, organized, equipped, and completely changed from the species the Federation remembered. Computer, display the genetic analysis from the Kepler station. Incident, Kessa said. Her main screen showed the medical data collected when human operatives had taken control of the strategic mining facility at Kepler Station. The takeover had been bloodless but absolute. One moment, Federation forces controlled the station. The next moment, humans did. The genetic samples told a story that made Kessa's scientific mind reel. These were definitely humans, but they had been altered in ways that should have been impossible. Enhanced muscle density, improved neural pathways, organs that could process toxins that would kill any other known species. But the most disturbing changes were mental. Brain scans showed new structures that had never existed in baseline humans, regions that seemed designed for network communication and shared consciousness. Dr. Thrain, her assistant Genko, called from across the lab. "You need to see this transmission. It's from one of our deep space monitoring stations." The message was from Dr. Marcus Webb, a human xenobiologist who had worked with Federation scientists before the war. He had been presumed dead for 30 years. "Hello, Kessa," the recorded message began. Webb looked older, but also somehow younger than she remembered. His eyes held a depth that had not been there before. "I know you must have questions about what we've become." I wanted to explain, from one scientist to another. Kessa leaned forward, fascinated despite her fear. "When the Retribution fled to the Void sector, we were dying," Webb continued. "Our ship was damaged. Our people were injured and sick. We had, maybe weeks before, we would all be dead." The transmission shifted to show images from inside the Void sector. Kessa gasped at what she saw. Hidden among the radiation storms were structures of impossible complexity, geometric patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could process. "We found the architects by accident. Or maybe they found us. They had been waiting in the Void sector for millions of years, waiting for a species desperate enough to accept their gift." The images showed humans in containment pods, connected to machines that seemed to be made of living crystal and metal. Some of the pods contained bodies that were clearly dead. Others held forms that were changing, evolving, becoming something new. The architects explained that every species faces extinction eventually, Webb said. "Most accept it and die. A few fight it and still die. But very rarely a species is willing to pay the price to transcend it." Kessa watched in horror as the transmission showed the transformation process. Humans volunteering to have their bodies and minds altered by technology that violated every natural law she knew. The mortality rate was 70%, Webb admitted. 7 out of every 10 people who entered the transformation pods never came out alive. But those who survived... He paused, and his eyes seemed to glow slightly. "We became what humanity was always meant to be." The transmission showed the survivors of the process. They moved with perfect coordination, communicated without speaking, and demonstrated abilities that seemed almost supernatural. They could survive in vacuum for short periods. They could process information at superhuman speeds. They could share thoughts and experiences directly with each other. The architects taught us that evolution is not a gradual process, Webb explained. It's a series of sudden leaps when a species faces extreme pressure. They helped us make that leap artificially, but the cost had been more than just the deaths during transformation. The transmission showed what the humans had agreed to in exchange for survival. We became their instruments, Webb said simply. The architects believe the galaxy has become stagnant. Too many species have reached comfortable levels of technology and stopped progressing. They want to encourage further development. Kessa felt cold as she realized what this meant. The humans had not just been changed, they had been programmed, turned into agents of an ancient alien intelligence that wanted to reshape galactic civilization. But we retained our free will, Webb continued, as if reading her thoughts. The architects don't control us. They educated us, showed us possibilities we had never imagined, and we chose to accept their vision of the future. The transmission showed images of the transformed humans working together with terrifying efficiency. They had spent 30 years in the void sector, not hiding, but preparing, building ships that incorporated architect technology, training with weapons that could manipulate reality itself, planning for their return to galactic civilization. The ship you see as the UES Retribution is only partly the original vessel, Webb explained. Most of it was grown using architect biotechnology. It exists partially in normal space and partially in what they call the deep structure, a layer of reality underneath the one you're familiar with. That explained the impossible sensor readings. The ship was not just large, it was using space itself differently than any known technology. Our weapons don't just destroy matter, Webb continued. They can alter the fundamental forces that hold atoms together. Our engines don't just move through space, they can fold space around us. Our computers don't just process information, they can access the quantum substrate that underlies all reality. Kessa realized she was looking at a species that had leaped thousands of years ahead in technological development in just 3 decades. But the price had been their essential humanity. You're probably wondering if we're still human, Webb said, again seeming to read her thoughts. The answer is complicated. We have human memories, human emotions, human values, but we also have something more. We can see patterns that span centuries. We can think in ways that no baseline human ever could. We understand things about the universe that would drive unmodified minds insane. The transmission showed human children being raised in the void sector. They looked normal, but they moved and behaved with the same eerie coordination as the adults. They had been born already transformed, never knowing what baseline humanity had been like. The galaxy is about to change, Webb said, his voice becoming more serious. The architects have been patient for millions of years, but their patience is ending. They want to see genuine progress again. They want to see species push beyond their comfortable limits and reach for true greatness. And if species refuse to change voluntarily, we will help them change involuntarily, not through conquest, but through education, the same education we received. Kessa felt sick as she realized what he meant. The humans were not planning to destroy other species. They were planning to transform them, to force the same evolutionary leap that they had undergone. The process is not pleasant, Webb admitted, and not everyone survives it. But those who do become part of something greater than they ever imagined possible. The transmission was ending, but Webb had one final message. Kessa, you were always one of the best scientists I knew. You have a choice to make. You can fight what's coming and probably die. You can hide and definitely become irrelevant. Or you can join us and help guide the galaxy toward its next evolutionary step. Think carefully. Time is running out for the old galaxy. The new one begins whether you're ready or not. The transmission ended, leaving Kessa staring at a blank screen. Around her, the laboratory hummed with the quiet sounds of Federation technology. Normal technology, primitive technology, compared to what the humans now possessed. She looked out, the viewport at the stars, and wondered how many of them already contained human outposts. How many worlds were already under observation by transformed humans who could think and plan in ways that no Federation species could match. The humans had not just survived their extinction. They had used it as a stepping stone to become something that could impose its will on the entire galaxy. And they believed they were doing it for everyone's own good. Dr. Kessa Thrain had spent her career studying extinct species. Now she realized she might be looking at the extinction of everyone else. But not through death, through transformation into something unrecognizably different. The humans had learned the ultimate lesson in the void sector. Extinction was not the end. It was just another beginning, and now they were going to teach that lesson to everyone else. Fleet Admiral Vexnoth had commanded Federation fleets for 40 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and rogue AI networks. He had never faced anything like this. Standing on the bridge of the Federation Super Dreadnought Eternal Victory, he watched the largest fleet in galactic history move into position. 3,000 ships from 50 different species, all united by a single purpose: stop humanity before they could transform the galaxy. All fleet commanders, report status, Vexnoth ordered. The responses came in quickly. The Zerion battle groups were ready. The Altarian crystal ships had charged their quantum weapons. The Valdarian heavy cruisers had loaded their planet-killer missiles. Every species had brought their most advanced technology and their best crews. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors show the human fleet approaching. 1 large carrier and approximately 50 escort vessels." Vexnoth studied the tactical display. Those were terrible odds for the humans. 3,000 Federation ships against 51 human ships. It should have been a massacre. So why did he feel like they were the ones walking into a trap? "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm and patient, like someone waiting for an appointment rather than facing the largest military force in galactic history. "Admiral Chen," Vexnoth said, "I am Fleet Admiral Vexnoth of the Federation Combined Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and submit to Federation authority." Chen smiled. "Admiral Vexnoth, I remember reading about your victories against the Mordek Rebellion. Very impressive tactics, but you're fighting the wrong war now. This is your final warning. Surrender or be destroyed." "I appreciate the offer," Chen replied, "but we have other plans. Are you sure you want to do this? Your ships are full of young officers with families waiting for them at home." Vexnoth felt a chill at her tone. She was not pleading or threatening. She was simply stating facts. "Attack formation," he ordered his fleet. "All ships, open fire." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming any military academies survived to study it. The Federation fleet opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, gravity bombs, and weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The human ships simply vanished. "Where did they go?" Vexnoth demanded. "Sir, they didn't go anywhere," his sensor officer replied, confusion in his voice. "They're still there, but they're not there." "What does that mean?" "They seem to exist in normal space and in some other dimension at the same time. Our weapons are passing through them like they're ghosts." As if to prove his point, several Federation ships suddenly exploded for no apparent reason. Then more ships began dying, their hulls torn apart by weapons that seemed to fire from empty space. "Sir, I'm detecting energy discharges from the human ships, but they're coming from inside our formation," the tactical officer reported. Vexnoth realized what was happening. The human ships could phase in and out of normal reality. They could appear anywhere, fire their weapons, and disappear before the Federation ships could return fire. All ships, defensive formation, full shields, all weapons on automatic targeting. It did not help. The human ships appeared and disappeared at will, striking with precision that seemed impossible. They targeted weapon systems, engines, and command centers. Federation ships were disabled rather than destroyed, their crews left alive but helpless. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than I can count," his tactical officer reported. "The Xerion, Third Fleet is completely disabled. The Altarian crystal ships can't lock onto targets that keep phasing in and out of reality. But the worst part was not the technology. It was the coordination. The human ships moved like they were controlled by a single mind. They anticipated every Federation tactic before it was implemented. They countered every strategy before it could be executed." "How are they doing this?" Vexenoth muttered. His communication officer looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of quantum entanglement network between all human ships. They're sharing information instantaneously across the entire battle space." That explained the impossible coordination. The human crews were not just working together, they were thinking together. Every ship knew what every other ship was doing at all times. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it was over, nearly half the Federation fleet was disabled or destroyed. The surviving ships limped away from the battlefield, their crews traumatized by facing technology they could not understand or counter. But the space battle was only the beginning. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human forces were simultaneously attacking strategic targets on hundreds of worlds, but these were not random attacks. They were surgical strikes designed to paralyze Federation command and control systems. On the military world of Kepler Prime, Federation generals woke up to find their computers had been infected with something their technicians called a quantum virus. The virus did not just corrupt data, it seemed to rewrite the basic logical processes that computers use to function. On the industrial world of Vega 7, automated factories suddenly began producing human equipment instead of Federation supplies. When engineers tried to shut down the factories, they discovered that the machines were now operating according to principles that violated known physics. But the most disturbing reports came from worlds where humans had made direct contact with local populations. Governor Talvin of the Rigel colony sent a priority message that made Federation leaders question their own sanity. Human diplomats had arrived at his world and offered the population a choice: join the new galactic order voluntarily, or be integrated into it by force. They demonstrated their abilities, Talvin reported, his voice shaking. They showed us technology that makes our most advanced systems look like stone tools. They showed us medical treatments that can extend life for centuries. They showed us educational methods that can increase intelligence by orders of magnitude. And then they showed us what happens to populations that refuse their offer. The recording that accompanied Talvin's report showed a Federation military base that had been processed by human forces. The base was still there. The soldiers were still alive. But they had been changed. The processed soldiers moved with the same eerie coordination as the humans. They spoke in perfect unison when asked questions. They demonstrated physical and mental abilities far beyond normal Federation standards. But their eyes held no recognition of their former lives or loyalties. They retain their memories and personalities, Talvin explained, but they've been integrated into the human collective consciousness. They're still themselves, but they're also part of something larger. This was not conquest in any traditional sense. The humans were not destroying their enemies. They were absorbing them, turning them into extensions of human will and purpose. Federation psychologists who studied the processed soldiers reported that they seemed happy. They claimed to be more fulfilled and capable than they had ever been before. They insisted that integration into the human collective was a gift, not a punishment. But they were no longer truly Federation citizens. They served human interests. Now, even when those interests conflicted with their original loyalties, reports continued to pour in. Entire Federation fleets were being disabled by weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. Planetary governments were surrendering without a fight when human negotiators demonstrated the futility of resistance. Colony worlds were voting to join the human collective after seeing the benefits it offered. The Federation was not losing a war. It was being systematically replaced by something more efficient, more capable, and more unified than any galactic government had ever been. Fleet Admiral Vex Noth, retreating toward the core worlds with the survivors of his fleet, finally understood what Admiral Chen had meant when she said they were fighting the wrong war. This was not a war between two military forces. This was an evolutionary transition. The humans were not trying to defeat the Federation. They were trying to replace it with something better, and they were succeeding. In the communications center of his damaged flagship, Vex Noth received one final message from Admiral Chen. "Admiral," she said, her voice as calm as ever, "you fought well with the tools you had, but those tools are obsolete now. Your choice is simple. Continue fighting with methods that cannot win, or accept the future that is coming whether you resist it or not. Your crews are brave and honorable. They deserve to survive what comes next. Think carefully about what you ask them to die for." The transmission ended, leaving Vex Noth staring at static on his screen. Around him, his bridge. Crew looked to him for orders, but what orders could he give? How do you fight an enemy that can phase in and out of reality? How do you resist a force that offers integration instead of destruction? How do you preserve a way of life when something demonstrably better is being offered in its place? For the first time in his 40-year career, Fleet Admiral Vex Noth had no answers. The galaxy was changing, and all he could do was watch it happen. 6 months had passed since the return of humanity, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Ambassador Kyle Nash of the former Valdarian Republic walked through the corridors of what had once been the Federation Capitol building. The architecture was the same, but everything else had changed. The walls now pulsed with soft organic light. The air circulation system had been replaced with living organisms that cleaned and purified the atmosphere more efficiently than any machine. Human technicians worked alongside beings from dozens of species, but they all moved with the same coordinated purpose. The random chaos that had once characterized multi-species cooperation was gone, replaced by a harmony that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Kyle Nash was one of the last unconverted government officials still allowed to move freely. The humans had kept a few original representatives around for what they called transition assistants. He knew he was essentially a museum piece, a reminder of how things used to work before humanity showed everyone a better way. He entered the main council chamber where Admiral Sarah Chen now held court as humanity's galactic representative. The room had been redesigned according to human aesthetics. The old circular arrangement of floating chairs had been replaced by an amphitheater design that focused attention on the central speaking area. Chen stood at the center, addressing a mixed audience of converted and unconverted beings. She wore the same living uniform as always, but now symbols of authority from dozens of species were incorporated into its design, not as trophies, but as acknowledgments of the civilizations that had chosen to join the new order. The transition continues. To proceed smoothly, Chen was reporting to the assembly. 17 more systems have voted to join the collective this week. Industrial output in converted sectors is up 43%. Crime rates have dropped to nearly zero. Educational advancement is exceeding all projections. Kyle Nash listened to the statistics with growing unease. Everything Chen said was true. The human system worked better than anything the Federation had ever achieved. But the cost, Representative Kyle Nash, Chen said, turning to face him directly. You've been observing our progress for months now. What are your thoughts? All eyes turned to him. He could feel the collective attention of dozens of species, many of whom now shared a network consciousness that made his individual thoughts seem primitive by comparison. The efficiency is remarkable, he admitted. Crime, poverty, and conflict have virtually disappeared in converted territories. Your technology has solved problems we've struggled with for centuries. But Chen prompted, sensing his hesitation. But at what cost? The beings who've joined your collective, they're no longer who they used to be. They've lost something essential. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the converted beings in the audience. One of them, a former Zerion counselor named Vextai, stood to respond. Representative Keel Nash, Vextai said, his voice carrying harmonics that had not been there before his conversion. I retain all my memories, my personality, my individual thoughts and feelings. But I also have access to the accumulated knowledge and experience of millions of other beings. I can think more clearly, see patterns more accurately, and contribute to solutions that benefit everyone. What exactly have I lost? Your independence, Kyle Nash replied. Your ability to disagree with the collective will. Your right to make mistakes and learn from them individually. And what has that independence given the galaxy? Chen interjected. Centuries of war, inefficiency, and stagnation. Independence is a luxury that biological evolution provided for primitive survival. We've evolved beyond the need for such limitations. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing galactic maps from before and after the human return. The difference was striking. Trade routes were optimized. Resource distribution was perfectly balanced. Conflicts had simply ceased to exist. This is what coordination accomplishes, Chen explained. When every being can access the collective knowledge and work toward common goals, problems that seemed unsolvable become simple to address. But who decides what those common goals are? Keel Nash asked. We all do, replied Dr. Marcus Webb, who had arrived from his research facility on the former Earth. The collective consciousness isn't a dictatorship. It's a democracy where everyone has access to all available information and can contribute to decision-making processes. Webb looked different from his transmission months ago. His integration with the collective had deepened, and strange patterns of light moved beneath his skin. But his eyes still held intelligence and what seemed like genuine concern. Keel Nash, you're afraid that we've lost our humanity. But we've actually found it. For the first time in our species' history, humans aren't fighting each other, competing, destructively, or making decisions based on incomplete information. We're working together as we were always meant to. And other species? Keel Nash pressed. Are they working together as they were meant to, or as you've decided they should? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Chen answered. Every species that has joined the collective has done so voluntarily, after seeing the benefits. We don't force anyone to convert. We simply demonstrate the advantages and let them choose. What about the systems that refuse to join? Chen's expression became slightly colder. They remain free to govern themselves as they see fit, but they also remain isolated from the collective's benefits. No trade agreements, no technological sharing, no mutual defense pacts. They're welcome to maintain their independence, but they can't expect to remain relevant in the new galaxy. Kyle Nash understood the implicit threat. Species that refused to join would not be destroyed, but they would be left behind as the rest of the galaxy moved forward with capabilities they could never match. The old galaxy was dying, Chen continued. The Federation had existed for centuries without making any real progress. The same problems persisted generation after generation because individual species were too focused on their own interests to work toward genuine solutions. She moved to stand directly in front of Kyle Nash. We've given the galaxy a future. Not the future you expected, perhaps, but a future where every being can reach their full potential as part of something greater than themselves. Is this what the architects wanted? Kyle Nash asked. The architects wanted evolution, Webb replied. They wanted to see biological intelligence push beyond its natural limitations. They've seen this pattern before, species reaching a comfortable level of development and then stagnating. They intervened to prevent that stagnation. By turning you into their agents? By teaching us to become our own agents of change, Chen corrected. The collective consciousness isn't controlled by the architects. It's controlled by everyone who's part of it. We make our own decisions about the galaxy's future. The assembly was listening intently to this exchange. Kyle Nash realized this was not just a conversation. It was a demonstration. The humans were showing everyone present how they handled dissent and skepticism. "What happens to me?" he asked. "I represent the old system. I can't be part of your collective because I fundamentally disagree with it. Where do I fit in the new galaxy?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "You have the same choice everyone has. You can join us and add your perspective to the collective wisdom. You can remain independent and accept isolation from the new galactic community. Or you can help us manage the transition by serving as a bridge between the old ways and the new ones. And if I choose none of those options, then you choose irrelevance," she said simply. "The galaxy is moving forward with or without you, but we'd prefer it to be with you." Kyle Nash looked around the chamber at the faces watching him. Some were converted beings whose expressions showed patient understanding tinged with something that might have been pity. Others were unconverted representatives like himself, waiting to see how he would respond. "I need time to think," he said. Finally, "Of course," Chen replied. "Take all the time you need. But remember that while you're thinking, the galaxy continues to change. Every day that passes makes the old ways more obsolete and the new ways more necessary." As the assembly dispersed, Keelnash walked slowly back to his quarters. Through the windows, he could see the orbital platforms where humans were constructing new types of ships. Vessels that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to think about. He thought about his homeworld, where traditional Valdarian culture was being gradually replaced by more efficient human methods. His people were not being forced to change, but they were choosing to change because the alternatives were becoming increasingly unviable. In his quarters, Kyle Nash activated his personal communicator and sent a message to his government. It was brief and to the point. The humans have won. Not through conquest, but through demonstration of superiority. They offer integration, not domination. But the result is the same. The galaxy we knew is ending. New recommendation. Negotiate the best possible terms for voluntary conversion before involuntary conversion becomes the only option. He sealed the message and sent it, knowing it would likely be his last act as a representative of the old galactic order. Outside his window, human ships moved through space with impossible